Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings to the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem, All is Truth, another theodicy we're going to find here. And it takes us back to the John 18:38 moment when Christ and Pilate are speaking, and Pilate will ask the famous "What is truth?" question. Now this is poem number 7 of the 22 From Noon to Starry Night cluster, and this is one of the more difficult poems actually in Leaves of Grass to reconcile with other areas of Leaves of Grass, and it's going to make us in some ways think of the great Emily Dickinson and some of her poetry, as well as a poem maybe by Ralph Waldo Emerson that we'll comment on. Now our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you were with us from the very beginning, the inscriptions poems up to and including a set of introductory comments for Starry Night, and then we just finished with Mannahatta. Now, our Nortons, that gives us some background information, will tell us that this poem appeared as Leaves of Grass number 18 in the Leaves of Grass 1860, as Leaves of Grass number 1 in the supplementary Songs Before Parting of Leaves of Grass 1867, again as part of another Leaves of Grass group in 1871, but with its present title, and finally in the present cluster in Leaves of Grass 1881. The manuscript title, As of the Truth, has been one of the titles that was given to this poem. The text remained unchanged, except that after Leaves of Grass 1860, Whitman dropped the interesting third line, quote, "Me with my mole's eyes unrisen to buoyancy and vision unfree," end quote. Whitman's answer to Pilate's eternal question, as we commented on it, the John 18:38 question, what is truth, was influenced by the Hegelian idealism reflected through Emerson, Coleridge, and other authors familiar to his youth. The relation of truth as being greater than falsehood, like that of good being greater than evil, presented to the poet a genuine philosophic dichotomy, the two seemingly integral halves of the whole being, like positive and negative, attracted by, independent upon each other. In the long run, Whitman says, in the perfect return in each of these temporal microcosms is comprised in the eternal macrocosm. The poem may express Whitman's personal solution of this perplexing paradox, leaving him free to sing and laugh and deny nothing. And obviously Emerson's poem, Each and All, comes to mind. Now, as we look at this poem, I want to be reminded of starting from Paumanok, right at the very beginning of our study together. Do you remember this? He says, omnes, omnes, let others ignore what they may. I make the poem of evil also. I commemorate that part also. I am myself just as much evil as good, and my nation is, and I say there is in fact no evil. Or if there is, I say it's just as important to you, to the land, or to me as anything else. And you'll remember that in Song of Myself, passage 30, he says, all truths wait in all things. Now with that in mind, let's turn to this really interesting and, dare we say it, enigmatic poem. The use of the word all is significant because he's used that over and over again. And his use of the word truth, go back to Song of Myself 30, as we said, all truths wait in all things, or Song of the Redwood Tree 1. You'll remember what he has to say there about the truth has of the world continually wait. You'll remember in Laws of Creation, Compact Truth, in Passage to India, Part 2, Proud Truths of the World. So he's been playing this game with the idea of truth throughout Leaves of Grass. And he'll say it this way, "Oh, me, man of slack faith, so long." Notice his use of the word faith as it relates to truth. And this use of the word slack, you'll remember from Locomotive at Winter, right? Faith, you'll remember in Cabin Ships at Sea, in his first use of it there. Notice the first two lines will end with so long. Standing aloof, denying portions so long. This idea of aloof, I sit and look out, of course, and do nothing is the in there. That idea of taking that artistic perspective, dare we say it, that theologian's perspective. Only aware today of compact, all diffused truth. Watch how he uses the word compact, trying to reduce. It reminds us of what Thoreau says in Walden. I went to the woods because I wish to live deliberately. He'll say the essential facts of life, if you'll remember that. Discovering today there is no lie or form of lie and can be none, but grows as inevitably upon itself as the truth does upon itself, or as any law of the earth or any natural production of the earth does. Well, now think about the brilliance of a set of lines that we just read, being placed inside of a poem called All Is Truth, being placed inside of a collection of poems called Leaves of Grass. The organic nature. In other words, already we see the argument that he's making, that no matter what happens in life, this is why we call it a theodicy, there's always going to be some sense that things will work out. This has been his ongoing theodicy. No longer ask, why is this happening to us, but rather, why is this happening for us? And we'll see this now going forward. Notice in parenthetics, this is curious. We've said how he loves this word. This is curious. It may not be realized immediately, but it must be realized. I feel in myself that I represent falsehoods equally with the rest, and that the universe does, in parenthetics. And again, takes us back to Song of Myself 51, I'm large, I contain multitudes. You'll remember this idea. And then he'll now continue with only time this phrase gets used, where has failed. This is an interesting syntactical line. Where has failed? A perfect return, indifferent of lies or the truth. Is it upon the ground, or in water or fire, or in the spirit of man, or in the meat and blood? Now this is an interesting way to ask this question. Notice, where has failed, only use what has failed. And then he uses the word perfect 89 times in Leaves of Grass. The word perfect or perfection gets used. We've commented already on it. And the notion of the ideal of where has failed a perfect return, indifferent of lies or truth. Notice these four rhetorical questions. Is it upon the ground, or in water or fire, or in the spirit of man, or in the meat and blood? In other words, what is it that controls outcome? On what grounds will we determine what it is that we qualify as positive or negative outcome? Now, obviously borrowing heavily from the ideas of Hegel. Meditating among liars and retreating sternly into myself, I see that there are really no liars or lies after all. Now, I can't tell you how radical this idea is for Whitman's audience of his day. And now, playing almost like an Emily Dickinson-like game, where he speaks in some ways around his idea instead of directly at it, because some of these ideas, borrowing obviously from great writers and thinkers like Plotinus, some of this is just translinguistic. Notice we'll have 6 of these ands in anaphoria. And that nothing fails its perfect return, we're back to perfect, and that what are called lies are perfect returns, and that each thing exactly represents itself and what has preceded it. Again, back to the idea of Hegel, the Hegelian synthesis of thesis, antithesis, and the dialectic between the two producing synthesis. And that the truth includes all, here obviously the beginning of, or the title of the poem, and is compact, back to that word, just as much as space is compact, and that there is no flaw or vacuum in the amount of the truth, but that all is truth without exception. And henceforth, I will go celebrate, back to Song of Myself, passage 1, I celebrate myself and sing myself, anything I see or am, and sing and laugh. We've seen the way in which that word gets used, laugh, all the way through Leaves of Grass, and deny nothing. Now, the phrase deny nothing gets used one time in all Leaves of Grass, and it is right here. Well, what exactly is going on in this little poem? Well, I think one of the things he's arguing is that life is complex, and therefore truth also is complex. But I think the real point here is his theodicy. Why must there be evil? Why must there be untruth? Why must there be bad things? Why must there be pain, suffering? And as we've said, for Whitman, the greatest exemplar of that is the great Civil War itself. Why must there be this pain and suffering? Well, it's propedeutic. It's instructional. It's all designed for growth. That is to say, Leaves of Grass. It's all designed for growth. And to that degree, then, all things work to the fruition of this dynamic growth. Even if there are lies, ultimately, it always is going to find its way to the truth. This is his position. At 2b, I love the repetitions that we see here and the enigmatic language, especially born of that strange syntax. At 3a, there's a number of places that we can go here. I mean, we've already mentioned, for example, the Emerson set of lines, each and all, and you can certainly play the game out there. I think Whitman's audience would immediately go to another biblical passage, not just John 18:38 in the what is truth passage, but the Romans 8:28 passage that says all things work together for good. Now there is obviously a theological continuation of the line, but it's clear that Whitman's kind of playing this game in what we've called his informed optimism. Everything works together in the end towards what? Well, democracy, freedom, and the like. We mentioned Hegel. I love, though, to read this poem as it relates to Song of Myself, passage 2. Do you remember this in Song of Myself, passage 2? What he will say here at the end. He says, "Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun." There are millions of suns left. "You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself." This filtering is, I think, specifically what he's mentioning and meaning when he talks about truth. But because we're there, and I mentioned our Emily Dickinson at the beginning, you'll remember, of course, this wonderful little poem, "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuits lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. The brilliance of what Dickinson can say in just a few brief lines, I think, is very similar to what's happening here. Finally, at 3b, do you agree that in the end, even the evil and the pain, can we say the lie, even the lie all works together for good? Do you buy that idea? And is reading Lisa Grass in some ways expanding your idea of the truth? And are you aware that that's kind of happening? Speaking of, let's come back to Riddle in our next offering, and we'll play more of the same game. Thank you.